I'm deleting Windows. I've used Windows just about my entire life. I've encountered other operating systems and OSs over the years. Library computers were Macs for a bit, and I had some friends growing up who messed around with some pretty janky, albeit functional, variants of Linux in the early 2000s. But aside from that, I haven't messed with much other than Windows. I have used Windows 98 all the way up through XP, into Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and then Windows 10, and followed by now currently Windows 11. If you don't live under a rock and pay attention to any kind of tech-related news, you may have heard about Microsoft and their Qualcomm chips, their investments into OpenAI, and their insistence on de-educating people on how to function and use computers. I am somebody who's always wanted my computers to be a tool that I build and then I get to use. And when you install Windows, for years, that was pretty much the case. By late Windows 8, it stopped feeling like the case. It felt like you were leasing all of the software on your computer, and while maybe you built the box, it didn't feel like this was a piece of software or a piece of machinery that I created myself that I get to use to its fullest. By the time that you're seeing this recording, the process has already begun. I spent most of this morning very slowly and tediously backing up as much of this computer as I possibly could. This little Western Digital hard drive called My Passport, it's a 4 terabyte drive, is currently about half full. This is full of all of my art, assets, and video backups, and a bunch of save games that are important to me. I'm sure all of you Linux heads out there, and probably some people who aren't familiar, are sitting there and screaming, well, what version, what distro, what type of Linux, what flavor of Linux are you going to use? I'm going to be using Linux Mint, or test running. If it doesn't work, then we'll go with a different distro, but I'm going to be test running Linux Mint Cinnamon. And all of my hardware has compatible drivers, including the stuff that I use for my cameras. So that process hopefully will go smoothly. I've downloaded the ISO, and when I finish this flash cut here, you're probably going to start seeing some footage of installation on a shaky hand cam.
That's inconvenient.
Well, unfortunately, it's difficult to record footage of me installing stuff because turns out you can't run OBS screen capture while there is nothing to capture and no software on the computer. So I will see you in a moment. We'll continue with this installation.
Now I actually had to unplug that monitor right here because if I don't unplug it, then it defaults to this one instead of this one. So when I go to get into the boot menu, it's sideways, and that's no bueno. So just waiting for the logo to pop up here. Wait. Okay, there we go. And done. So, interesting. It's not seeing my boot device. Why not? After, actually plugging in the boot drive, I've now made it into here. So, start Linux Mint. Start Linux Mint in compatibility mode, or for manufacturers. So, I guess here goes nothing. It just gave me an error screen, so that's mildly concerning. Let's plug this monitor back in. Well, we've got the logo on the screen, so my audio interface just fell off my desk. Well, once again, we've defaulted to the monitor over here. All right, we return, and it's now installing. So, this is why I had this monitor unplugged initially, because it wants this monitor to be the default. And it has this monitor set like this, so I'm going to have to fix that. But we've done the install. Okay. So now I just have to very carefully grab this. There we go. Sweet. Okay. Keep new configuration. All right. We can close that for right now. And then welcome to Linux Mint. So I can change the desktop colors. Probably going to leave them as are because they look kind of nice. But so that's like your full dark mode. Got it. That's your light mode. We'll do the light and dark. All right, so we're going to set up snapshots. So this basically allows you to do like system recovery. Then we're going to go to driver manager. I'm pretty sure this is where we're going to get NVIDIA drivers. Yep. Okay, so this is the open source driver. I realize that somebody's probably screaming in the comment section, but you see this? Yeah, I'm just going to install. Well, come on. I'm just going to use NVIDIA's drivers until I can get a card that isn't NVIDIA, which is the long-term plan. So open source will prevail in the end, but for right now, we're just going with the NVIDIA driver. And now it's installing. And then I'm pretty sure the next thing is just, yeah, it's the update. This is just like software updates and stuff. So, and then after that, it's just documentation, help, and then contribute. And so we're pretty close to the end of this portion of the process. So when I return, it's going to be me with this setup.
All right, everybody. So now I am talking to you on Linux Mint. It's been a few days. It's actually been a week, and since I started the install. And I've been through a bit. I've got a little bit to talk about, and I've got some things I can share with my base level of experience. This isn't going to become a Linux channel. This is mostly being considered a vlog for me, kind of like the state of the channel videos I upload from time to time. So I hinted at it at the beginning, but I would like to elaborate a little bit more. Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft's general UI design is really driving me insane. And because of this, my interest in using Windows went from pretty middling down to almost nothing overnight. I'm aware that these changes to Windows are limited to very specific types of chips currently, but that is not going to stay that way. And if they're designing an OS around using a digital chat window, instead of designing an OS around usability and functionality, it's going to move in the opposite direction from what I want from a computer. So we're on Linux now. I'm on Linux Mint. I'm talking to you right now on Linux Mint. I've streamed on Linux Mint for a week. So far, the only actual major growing pains has been OBS, because I had to learn the difference between flat-packed software and direct installed software. And flat-packed OBS isn't compatible with any plugins from what I can tell. Then when I did finally install OBS correctly, I learned how to install software through terminal, which was fun. We ran into some issues pretty quickly because I was still getting some pretty major crashes. Essentially what happened was when I was setting up OBS, the actual files inside of OBS that, let you click and drag plugins in, the plugins folder just straight up didn't exist. And it wasn't even a matter of creating a folder. If I created a folder, it would just cause OBS to launch in safe mode. If you do actually want to see how we solved it, the lovely individuals in this Discord, specifically UDK404, helped me go through and showed me basically how to solve the issue and make a backup and do a lot of, fun stuff behind the scenes in Terminal. I've been having a lot of fun messing around with Terminal. It feels like old school computer days, and in that regard, I quite liked it. It was an interesting experience, frankly. Once that issue was solved with OBS, I was able to get plugins installed so I could have my captions and my multi-stream, which allows me to stream to multiple outputs and, stream to YouTube. Kind of important, right? Once we had that set up, then I ran into a second issue with OBS where I would boot it up and it would just crash loop. I could not keep it running. What I ended up doing actually was deleting the profile that I had transferred over from Windows, from my old setup, which should have been fine, but for some reason wasn't. So once I deleted that window or that profile, it launched just fine without issue. So, aside from some fiddliness with OBS, the transition has been rather smooth. Now, Adobe software doesn't work natively on Linux, regardless of what I've looked into. Unless I'm willing to either run a virtual machine or run it within Wine, and I'd have to steal it. I'd have to get it from the Swedish Public Library. I just decided, you know what? Let's just rip this Band-Aid off entirely. I've already deleted Windows and formatted my drives. I don't even have a Windows.old folder anymore. It's all gone, dead, done, dusted. Once I made that decision, I actually jumped in and started using some open source editing software. So I first tried out Olive Editor, which is a piece of software that I've used before. Now, this is it in the software manager. This is the Flatpak version. It is a piece of editing software that was designed from the ground up to mimic the use of Adobe. So essentially trying to create a one-to-one replica of the Adobe workflow, which is what I'm most used to. However, it doesn't run particularly well and crashes a lot. It actually ran better on Windows when I was messing around with this about a year ago. So that is kind of a no-go for now, if not entirely. So instead, what I've gone with and what I'm messing around with now, in fact, this is what I'm editing this video on, is Kdenlive. Now, Kdenlive is, again, an open source video editing platform. It has a bit of an odd workflow, but I find it runs really quick. And the reason I've decided to not go with something like Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve is I never quite liked the workflow, and it always felt sluggish and slow to me in a really bad way, to the point where I just didn't want to use it if at all possible. And here it is running. This is the video that you are currently watching that I have in editing. It is quite fine. I've got several tabs up on a different monitor right now with tutorials open. There's lots of resources on how to use this software, which has been pretty nice. So far the learning curve hasn't been particularly steep or anything. I mean, I've learned how to use harder software, and it's been a pretty simple process. All in all, I think at this point I should bring this video to conclusion. This transition, at least for me, has been rather smooth. Of course, there's definitely some learning curves. I mean, it took me a little bit to realize that I had to right-click on the file manager like this to show hidden files to actually be able to get into the computer itself. And of course, open as root and open as terminal are things that you need to learn pretty quick. But frankly, I've been having fun with terminal. It's been a relatively painless experience for me. It's like, as I said, it feels like I'm using old Windows again. And that is a positive thing. And it's also worth noting that sometimes it's fun to learn something new. And that's what this journey is for me. It's moving all of the games and everything that I do into either Proton or compatibility layers and becoming a streamer and content creator powered by Linux. I've already used a lot of open source software. OBS is open source. I've used VLC and Audacity for years. It's just been a matter of pulling the Band-Aid off and learning something different. So that kind of brings me to the end of this video. I might do an update on the state of my OS at some point, especially if I do end up moving to a different distro at some point or trying something else out. But for right now, I think I'm just going to put this one to bed and just say, hey, this experience hasn't been that difficult. If you want to try it, you can. I'll put the links to the things that I downloaded down below. And there's also now officially a Linux tech support channel in my Discord. I mean, this morning, I swapped the default audio drivers to Pipewire, whatever the hell that is. Anyway, it took me a minute, but it wasn't too difficult to set up. And now I'm running with better audio drivers, which don't randomly make my audio come out of my computer monitor for no logical reason. But, it's fine. The only real shame and actual loss is this stupid thing. This is my hotkey pad. I don't currently have drivers to make it work. So I need to figure that out. It just thinks it's a normal keyboard and a mirror of the same keyboard. And so I need to mess around with that a bit and make that functional. But yeah, all in all, not too bad. Been fun. Thanks for watching this video of me swapping to Linux. Go delete Windows.